Hi guys! So it's Wendy here from the Irish Foster Family, and today I want to talk to you about dealing with lies. So I made this PowerPoint for you. Our goals for today are to help us to understand the why behind the lies. Also to remember to ground ourselves before we react to our children, and to share information on how we can support our children's learning and recovery in this area. And so this is the why. This figure here is from Beacon House. They have wonderful resources online if you want to check those out. So we know that early childhood is a very critical and sensitive time for brain growth. So the brain is basically building. And this happens in stages. So this figure here shows us 3 stages. It goes from the primitive brain, the next part is the limbic brain, and then the prefrontal cortex. Executive planning happens up here, thinking, learning, cause and effect thinking, and controlling ourselves and our actions all happens from here. So when our children with trauma history experience a huge amount of stress, especially at critical brain development windows, this means the brain builds differently to the next child who hasn't experienced so much stress, and it leaves their brain much more aware. You'll also see children being hypervigilant, children with trauma history, and when they are in what they perceive as a stressful situation, they will not be thinking here where they can plan and think properly. They will be thinking from the fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain. They are in survival mode, and we need to keep that into consideration when we are talking about confronting the child with a lie. Let's talk about lies. It's very interesting because we teach our children that lies actually are socially acceptable. When did you last tell a little white lie? Not all children will understand the difference. Lying also involves a number of decisions, which can offer the child large benefits or small benefits. It may also help them to avoid something. Children with trauma history or attachment disruption often tell wild, crazy lies. So they're not even thinking how abstract these lies are. They often lie on impulse. We already mentioned it's a survival technique, and a really well learned survival technique, because they got this far in life, which is amazing. Now, unfortunately, they're expected to unlearn that survival technique. So, as we said, these children may have had to lie in the past to survive. One little tip is if you try and insert humour into the situation, slight bit of humour. If a child laughs, it takes them out of the survival brain and they're not afraid anymore, and it can just help them to reconnect to the prefrontal cortex. So just try that to slightly diffuse the situation. Give it a go. Number 1 rule: we need to remember that the lie is not about us. The child is not doing it to us. They're not doing it at us. The lie is the lie, but we need to remember that it's not about us. We also really need to ground ourselves before we are in a position to speak to the child. We need to make sure we are calm and coming from a calm place so that we can help the child work their way through this. I find if I'm coming from a place of compassion, I do a much better job of responding to my children with trauma history. So I try and remind myself of brain development theory and how trauma has shaped my child's brain. This is a picture here, and it is pretty self-explanatory, but it's a typical brain compared to a brain of a child who suffered extreme neglect. I suppose we need to remind ourselves to act with compassion and remember that we are trying to undo what went on before. So we're in a way reparenting the child. So that's going to take time. And compassion is a good place to start from. So, dealing with the lie. I wouldn't ask the child why they did something. They usually don't know, and this can also offer them an opportunity to lie again on top of the original lie, so just don't go there. I wouldn't recommend asking the child why did they lie. Remember, they're not in the prefrontal cortex, they're not in the right place for answering you, so you're not going to get an answer. I haven't got one in 19 years, so good luck if you do. When we are speaking to the child, we need to sit down. We need to not tower above the child. And we need to consider that perhaps even before we began to speak, that this child is so hyper aware that they have already picked up on clues and they have gone into primitive brain survival mode already. We also need to consider that we may not ever know the worst thing that has happened to our child because they haven't been with us perhaps for all their lives. So at times we know that the child will lie to protect themselves. It's a survival technique. It may have worked in the past, and the child may lie to avoid the worst thing happening again, and we may not even know what that is. Children with trauma history often lack empathy and remorse that we perceive, that we feel that they should give. They can learn these skills, definitely. They may be a little bit delayed in this learning, so please don't force it. It will come with conversations, with calmness. So yeah, just don't expect it to be there overnight. So the to-dos, we need to, number one, tell the child that they're safe. We need to calmly tell the child what we know, the facts. When we're asking the child questions, we could phrase them like, what can you tell me about that? Please don't use closed questions, which they can give you with a yes or no answer, because you're going to get a quick lie. So you could ask, what did you see? How did this happen? Something that they can't just answer with a yes or a no. If your child is very uncomfortable, you could suggest that they go and write down what they know about the situation and come back to you. If the child offers the truth, you thank the child. If they don't, we have to try and not dwell on it. Remember, it's not about me. The child is not lying to me. It's not about me. You can revisit it later on, however, by saying, I hope you know that you can trust me to tell me what happened when you're ready. If the situation at any time becomes very heated, please press the pause button. You need to protect your relationship, your attachment relationship with your child. So please don't let all the stress come into the situation. And when you play around with the techniques and you find something that works, pass that information on to your child's school, to your child's teacher, so that everyone's on the same page, and they know how to approach the child. So the child will learn safety and trust, and they will be able to tell their truth. We need to be mindful of our language. We don't use the word liar in our house. I firmly believe that if you call me a liar, I will grow up to prove you right. So we just need to be careful the language that we're using around this learning, which will happen for the children. So much of our energy goes into caring for our children. And I just want to acknowledge that we also need to take care of ourselves. Caring for a child with trauma history and attachment disruption can be very draining. So you need to look after yourself, be kind to yourself, and go easy on yourself. There are lots of resources online. This was a lovely one that I found, and it specifically deals with trauma for children. And you know, reading a story to a child can be a real non-confrontational way of telling them that, you know, it's okay, I hear you, emotions are okay. So that's one that I found. It was free online. These are resources from ourselves, from Irish Foster Family. We have 3 videos up online, and this will be the 4th. So if you want to keep up to date, please subscribe. Oh, I just love this image. So it is a researcher, and she took her little baby into an MRSI scan, and what was shown was how when she was showing love to her baby, it was bringing certain parts of the brain to life, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. Like, love can heal, and what you're giving your children, your foster children, your adopted children, your children who have had trauma history, what you're giving them by showing them love is just amazing, and well done you.